with what I've would like to share this evening. Resilience in uncertain times, supporting ourselves as we support others. About a year ago, I concluded a 3-year study into the use of coaching and rehabilitation with parents of children with neurodisability. We compared the effect of OPC, one form of coaching, to usual care by training half of a group of allied health clinicians in the coaching method and then monitoring how they used it and how children and parents perceived its impact. What we found profoundly affected the way I teach rehabilitation professionals and led me to propose tonight's topic. That psychological flexibility is critical to person-centered rehabilitation and maintaining our resilience in our work. Let me explain. This coaching intervention is used with a range of people with a wide range of health conditions and contains many elements that will be familiar across rehabilitation settings. Setting goals with clients about everyday things that are important to them, problem solving with clients about how these goals could be achieved, and working together on a plan of action. But distinctively for a rehabilitation intervention, this method required therapists to consciously convey empathy for parents' emotional experience, to invite parents to express their hopes and dreams for their child and their family. This became the basis of the goal-setting conversations. Using open-ended questions, the therapist raises parents' awareness of their existing strengths, skills, knowledge, and resources that they already have that might help them to move closer to their goal. So compared with most rehabilitation interventions, there was quite a lot of emphasis in this coaching method on therapists being emotionally present in order to show authentic empathy, being cognitively flexible about the direction that the parent might take the session, following parents' lead on what's most important to them, being able to self-regulate their own emotional state so that they can stay connected with parents when they expressed strong emotions. I'm so frustrated with this child. Distressing information, for example, punishment strategies, or unfamiliar ideas, often very creative ideas, from the parent in ways that they might achieve the goal. Ultimately, therapists needed to be willing to let go of control of the direction of therapy conversations in this coaching approach. So although the main focus of the study was the effect of OPC coaching on children and parents, what emerged for us as the key lesson was the extreme difficulty most therapists had in being psychologically flexible. We'd completely overlooked this in preparing them for implementing the coaching. The therapist who hadn't received training in OPC scored on average about 20% on our measure of this empathetic, person-centered, client-involved coaching. Most parents were in an entirely passive role in their therapy in these encounters. They were on the receiving end of unsolicited advice, prescription, and assessment. Although therapists trained in OPC the coaching approach invited higher levels of parent engagement overall, it was a lot lower than the 80% threshold that we were aiming for to indicate that OPC indeed had been delivered. As we looked at the parts of coaching where therapists deviated from the coaching methods, it was exactly those points of uncertainty of where that conversation might go next, or intense emotion from the parents that threw the therapists. In those moments, therapists reverted to advising, paraphrasing, and diagnosing. That is, in the face of therapists' own psychological distress, most therapists avoided these sensations by reassuming control of the conversation, often behind the guise of professional expertise. A few therapists, as we can see up here, were able to stay connected with their emotional experience in the moment of stress and maintain their focus on supporting the parent. So the research literature describes this as exhibiting psychological flexibility. We love a good definition. That is the ability to recognize and adapt to situational demands in the pursuit of a personally meaningful long-term outcome. Rehabilitation provision in New Zealand has been under sustained pressure for quite some time, with insufficient resource to meet demand, greater restrictions on our choice and control as health professionals, and uncertainty as to the future. The therapists who took part in this study were your typical warm, passionate, brave, and open-minded allied health clinicians. Yet our rehabilitation settings have created a situation, and often a culture, that accepts psychological rigidity or inflexibility as a norm. I'd like to propose that concentrating on our psychological flexibility might be a more helpful way in remaining engaged in our work, connected with those that we're serving, and proactive in containing the stresses of New Zealand's rehabilitation environment. Tonight, I'm going to show you that addressing our psychological flexibility does more than maintain our resilience. It feeds our passion. Now, about this stage of the talk, we'll start to self-diagnose our psychological flexibility or inflexibility. And if you're interested, there are measures on this that you can look up online. But it is worth remembering that we all have moments of each response. It's more of a continuum than two separate camps, and definitely more of a journey than a destination. The trick is to become more aware of when we move from one end of that continuum to another. Like all powerful tools for change, the journey to greater psychological flexibility has 3 easy steps. Notice, recognize a peak in your emotion and psychological demand or intensity, and then attend to it. Adapt our psychological response and our actions in a situation. And be really clear, know why it's worth it. What's your goal in the quality of your interactions with others? So noticing. Before we can attend to our own emotional distress, we first need to notice it's happening. And most of us have pretty well built-in avoidance systems for negative and distressing emotions. We're kind of wired that way. So it's always a learned skill to overcome our automatic tendency to distract ourselves and withdraw away from people or places that trigger these feelings, including rehabilitation clients. It's a perfectly natural response. But with greater awareness of our emotions, we can then choose how we respond rather than reacting. And Jean gave us some excellent other types of clinical scenarios in her talk around our moving into greater te reo and tikanga in our work. We can choose to look after ourselves in the moment of distress with a bit of self-compassion. And as we do this, reduce our distress and free up our thinking mind so we can make different choices. We can start to adapt our thoughts and our actions in the moment. For example, respond with empathy instead of defensiveness. Noticing our emotional state in the moment is clearly more challenging these days in the world of email, smartphones, and the modern rehabilitation setting. But a few simple strategies can make a big difference. And you guessed it, mindfulness practice is central to it. And just to clarify, by mindfulness, I simply mean awareness of our thoughts and emotions in this present moment. Let's take a moment right now. Soften your gaze a little. Allow yourself a deep breath. Shrug your shoulders a couple of times. Feel your body. Be heavy in your chair. Notice your feet on the ground. Notice your jaw. Let it rest. Where are your thoughts right now? What feeling is present? Is that feeling sitting somewhere in your body? Or it's just a feeling? Notice that feeling for a moment. No need to change it. There it is. A familiar friend. Say hello to that feeling. And then bring your attention back to the room you're in, to this talk. Self-compassion for the feelings you notice is also really important. If our automatic thought is, oh, this feeling isn't appropriate right now, or I should be over this already, then we're likely to disengage from the feeling and disconnect from whoever we're with, including ourselves. Self-compassion sounds like, this is how it is right now. Self-compassion is naming the feeling and staying with it. I feel overwhelmed. Right now, I'm feeling isolated. And responding to yourself in the way that you would if you saw this experience in a good friend, a child, a pet. Just like building fitness, mini actions of mindfulness like this can make a big difference. Think of it like choosing to take the stairs instead of the lift. But it does help to have a daily or weekly session of 15 to 30 minutes when your focus is on noticing your thoughts and feelings. Yeah, you might be sitting cross-legged on a cushion or joining the local meditation group, or you might be just intentionally noticing the world around you as you walk your dog, the thoughts and feelings that pass by as you brush your teeth. When you reflect on your weekly routine, where are the spaces to just notice? Mindful practices, whether it's focusing on our breathing, our body, our thoughts, nature, enables us to be more responsive and less reactive, both to ourselves and others. And in that moment of noticing, we can create a little bit of space where we pause, breathe, and make a more informed choice about how we respond. So how do you do mindful moments? How do you make it happen? What have you found helps you to make space to just notice? Chuck any tools or resources or just simple strategies into the chat now, or pop it directly onto our Padlet page. And we'll email out a wordle of these ideas to you after today's talk that you might find useful as a bit of a reminder poster or a bookmark. I've found the Smiling Mind is a great free and ad-free app, and the dropping anchor exercise in acceptance commitment therapy is really helpful for specific emotional experiences. Just like getting your fitness up with a focused workout, once you've done a few longer mindfulness sessions, and it doesn't take much, it becomes easier to do a top-up over the day, say 3 deep breaths before you enter a session with a client, and checking in with yourself at times during the session. So I promise 3 easy steps. Step 2, adapt. Adapt our response to a situation. We might do this with a client or in a workplace. And a really key strategy in this is what they call cognitive reappraisal. And really all it's about is noticing our thoughts in the situation and then reframing, pausing to think about how could we look at this situation differently, particularly when thoughts are unhelpful or just disempowering for us. An element of you might think, oh, well, it's true. But if it's not helpful to you and it's disempowering, then it's worth having a look at how you could reframe it. For example, I might think, well, my boss just doesn't like me. There's no way she's going to pick me for the conference. Instead, I pause, I breathe, and I wonder, what else could be true? Perhaps she's just having a bad day. Maybe she's distracted. I wonder what I could do to increase my chances of being the one that's funded to attend the conference. Maybe I should submit an abstract. How could I find out? So instead of feeling a victim to a situation and our emotions, we review our thoughts about it to create distance, reframe it, see it in a way that elevates our attention to what we have choice and control over, and that we can then act on. And very often this might be about saying, no, I won't do that. No, I'm not going to continue doing that. And the third easy step towards greater psychological flexibility is knowing why it's worth it and reminding ourselves of this as we take care of ourselves and stay present. Why do you show up? Why do you go do this work? What was the dream that you had that brought you to where you are now in life? What's the most important thing for you in your role? What lights your fire? I'm going to leave you with the words of Kahu, not his real name, a dad who took part in the coaching study I described earlier. Now, Kahu's experience reflects the willingness of his therapist to let go control, to stay with herself through some very challenging and stressful moments in the encounter where she really wasn't sure how this was going to go. She kept focus on why it was worth it and attending to her own responses. Over to Kahu. Well, I come from a sort of fucked up family, really. Dad was an alcoholic. He's also an abuser. When I say abuser, I mean alcohol, salt, on us kids, his kids. Yeah, had a rough life. Joined the gang when I was 13. Still an active member. Yeah, but I'm still a dad, love my kids. Just been through a bit of shit in my life, I've been a dad for a few years now. I just enjoy the kids, my family. As for my daughter, well, she's the love of my life. Love her like any parent. My only issue is the accident. It was my fault. I was the driver. I had their life in my hands and I crashed. My therapist at the moment, she's an awesome lady. She helped us so much. Before her, I had another one I didn't like. She didn't understand where I was coming from, where we were coming from with our daughter. Yeah, one I've got now, she's awesome. She's helped us. Can't thank her enough, eh? And the interviewer asks, so what do you like from a therapist? What do you expect from them? Or to understand, listen, ask questions that are things for us. Our therapist now, she does all that sort of thing for us. She listens, she explains things in my language, Know what I mean? Language I can understand. Whereas the other two, for her, well, they just like talk down to me, in a sort of judgmental way. Whereas this therapist, she doesn't judge. An interviewer asks, how would you describe your level of trust in her? 100%. Trust her 100%. Why is that? Well, I can tell her things and ask her stuff. She's got understanding and knowledge that I could try with our daughter. Well, not the other two before her. Nah, they couldn't work with my daughter. Because I didn't know how to explain it to them and what we wanted to do or try. But with this therapist, she explains it in a way like a kid or a child in my daughter's position. You know what I mean? She explains it in the way that I can explain it then to my baby. Well, that just works. And kia ora for me.